One of the most important aspects of choosing how to frame your shots is where to place the camera in regards to the physical relationship between the characters in a scene. You've heard me mention eyeline a few times, and that's because eyeline is hugely important. It's a really important aspect of your shot, and one that newbie directors can often overlook. When you decide where to put your camera, you can choose how close or how far it is to the eyeline of the subject that you're shooting. Is your subject looking just off the edge of the lens, or is he looking horizontally across the frame? There's no right or wrong answer. Different scenes call for different approaches. But one thing's for sure, you don't want to make the choice arbitrarily. The more on axis you are with the actor, that is, the more your camera is looking directly into their eyes, the more intimate and the more subjective your point of view is.
People's lives are at stake. Law and order is at stake. The fabric of the universe is at stake.
The audience is going to feel like they are in relationship with the character. They're going to feel like they're in the middle of a conversation, and they're going to trust the character more, and they're going to relate to the character more. The further away from the axis you move, the more objectively we can observe the character.
People's lives are at stake. Law and order is at stake. The fabric of the universe is at stake.
We can watch what they're doing from this removed, aloof point of view. We'll be more skeptical, more suspicious, and emotionally less engaged. And as I keep pointing out, this is just as true for nonfiction projects, including interviews, as it is for fictional scripted projects. Either way, the audience is in some kind of relationship with that person on screen based on where you chose to put the camera. There's a reason why news reporters fight and lobby very hard for the best camera angle of speeches and public addresses. When you've got two people in a scene, this choice of axis has a similar but slightly different effect. When we're listening to a conversation between two people, we can observe the conversation objectively from the side, or we can observe subjectively by moving over one of the actor's shoulders.
No, you look. Do you understand how serious this is?
Rather than just serving as a measure of our engagement or trust with the subject on screen, you're also affecting how the audience observes the relationship between the characters. Are we engaged in that relationship, or are we observing it from a more neutral perspective? And of course, it's a continuum. You can choose how close to the axis you want to shoot, and every degree you move closer to or further from their eye line, the more you encourage your viewers to feel like they're a part of that relationship or not. When you're closer to the axis, a medium or MCU shot is almost always going to see some of the foreground actor in the shot, making it what we call an OTS, or over-the-shoulder shot. And that's simply because omitting that foreground person wouldn't make sense. It would violate the geography of the room that you've presumably established in the master shot. But when it comes time for the close-ups, you have a choice. You can shoot the close-up clean or dirty. An MCU OTS is essentially a two-shot. It's a shot that shows the relationship between the two people, even though it's clearly more focused on the person whose face is showing. The fact that the other person is in the foreground steals some of the viewer's attention, consciously or unconsciously. Are they facing each other, facing away? You can often tell if the foreground person is listening intently or barely paying attention. All of these elements play into what's being communicated with that shot. But again, with a close-up, it's very much a single. And yet, you can choose to put a hint of the other person in the foreground. Usually they'll be very out of focus and what we call dirty, and it's often just a vague blob at the edge of the frame, but it does change how we read the shot. If you observe TV or movies, you'll see that this is a very frequent choice. The dirty single keeps just a hint of the relationship in your mind, and it keeps the viewer just a tiny bit more objective when viewing the main person in the shot. A clean close-up is significantly more intimate than a dirty one. It's just you, the viewer, and her. Very intimate. A clean single also isolates a character from the rest of the scene, which itself can convey meaning, depending on how you use it. If you choose to shoot one character always in clean singles, and everyone else is always shown in dirty or OTS shots, you're going to subtly convey a certain aloneness for that one character. You'll see this in Lord of the Rings, where Gollum is almost always shown in these clean singles. Not always, but more frequently than the other characters. But filmmakers will frequently also just use this technique briefly, in one moment, to show a protagonist making a key decision or facing an internal battle, even if it's just in the middle of a conversation with another person. These framing choices, how close to the eye line you shoot, how much of the foreground character you include, these are very powerful tools. And we're going to cover aspects similar to this in the cinematography course, but ultimately this is a directorial decision, since it clearly affects so much how the story is communicated.